What I feel is great for the discussion that I'm having is that, where's our big chart here? I'll just do this and then I'll start trying to talk about these dynamics of consciousness in the image itself, take some qualities of consciousness and show how they're operating. But before I do that, I laid out for myself, I wanted to see the whole range of our visual world. So I've tried to do it here in a very simple way in this chart. So let's start with this end. This is meant to represent our ever-expanding universe here. So this is the expression of all possible three-dimensional structures that it could exist. Now, if we use this reductive process of modern science, going to subtler levels of the structure of the thing, simpler and simpler structures of the thing, from this hugely complex structure of the wholeness of the body, and you can go to the cells, and then a simpler thing, the molecules like that. So if we apply the same principle, why do we do this in modern science? Is because they wanted to know what this was made of, first of all, and then also where does it come from? This is their simple search. They wanted the search for knowledge is for more and more and a greater understanding. Well, we come to a level in our culture where there was only the outside for us. We pretty much lost the inner experience. So all you're left with is the outer world, and you say, hey, there's all this stuff going on out here, and we need to protect ourselves from it. And then, of course, knowledge has organizing power. So the attention went on to the material world and trying to understand what it was made of and why the weather does this and why the moon moves, what the tides, all that intellectual knowledge about the structure eventually led to these going to subtler levels of the physical structure and getting to this unified field level. So like that, if we want to get to the source of what the visual arts are, then we're applying the scientific process here. We're focusing on form. Maybe I could just say something about, because I say colour form. Now there's so many other things I want to talk about before we get to that. But we've got this colour form. I'll come back to this guy in a minute. And then if we're trying to reorganize the structure of the visual arts, like seriously, all the disciplines of knowledge we have, they're all organized in terms of a hierarchy of organizing power. You start from the simplest, most universal level, and then you get to more finer and finer levels of more localized values of organization. But it's the thing right at the base there that's really, that field of all the laws of nature that's really holding everything together. So it's these getting to these subtler levels, organizing the discipline in terms of a hierarchy very systematically gives you a grasp of that whole discipline. You understand the whole range of it. So like that, we've distilled the visual arts down to just these two words. It's just colour form. And then, of course, came the realization that every colour has a form and every form has a colour. So in actual fact, these aren't two separate things. They're never two separate things in terms of all the manifest values of form in the universe. If we just take this pen, intellectually we can say it's a pen and it's blue. So like intellectually we can separate them out. But in terms of the thing itself, it's pen blue or blue pen. It's one thing. It's always one thing. Colour and form are always one thing. Very simple idea, but it was completely exploded my mind when I thought nobody told me, these principles, and like it was a revelation. And then this idea, okay, so it's colour form. Intellectually, we can separate them out. So now we've got to decide which is more fundamental in terms of the organizing power in the discipline. Is it colour or is it form? And then the conclusion is that it's form, because it's form or geometry that controls the shape of the colour, the size of the colour, and the position of the colour on the picture plane. So colour, blue, only has the power just to be blue. Only has the power to be blue. But geometry has the power to have these infinite shapes. And it's that aspect of colour form that is more fundamental than colour. This doesn't diminish the power that colour has in terms of the visual arts. It's on an equal basis with form, but in terms of the hierarchy in the discipline, in terms of understanding it, and then in terms of the most basic way of connecting the discipline to its source, then we focused on form. We could do the same thing with colour. We could do the same progression, analytical progression with colour, but because we want to organise the structure of the whole discipline and present it in a very systematic, scientific way, that will then, be meaningful in all the times to come. Not something that's more universal. So if we take all these infinity of possible forms, then if we collapse those back down to the simplest structure, we finish with something like maybe the cube, the tetrahedron, and the sphere. And then the next level of reduction would be going from three-dimensional forms to two-dimensional forms. So now we're in the arena of painting. The arena of painting is just a two-dimensional arena. And then we can understand that there's an infinity of forms that we can create on that surface. There's no limit to the forms we can create, but whatever forms there are on that we can create, they all collapse back to these very simple forms. The four-line form of the square, that's a very simple, just 4 lines. That gets simpler, we go to the 3 lines here, and then the next one would be a 2-line form, which is this petal shape, where 2 circles overlap and we create that petal or leaf shape. That's a 2-line form, and then we get this single form of the circle. Do you see these are simpler and simpler levels of organising power in terms of geometry? And then what are all these built up? What is controlling all these things? The line. Everything collapses back to the line. And then we say, if we reduce the line, what does it reduce to? It reduces to a point. And interestingly enough, when a painter starts painting, the first thing he creates is a point. As soon as the brush touches the canvas, he's made a point. And then the point goes on expanding until the whole universe comes out, like here. And then so we go from the point of matter, which represents here, and then we transcend. If we reduce this, we transcend the material world and we come to the point of consciousness. So this is that's Brahm with qualities, Sadguna Brahm here. This is the whole range going from point to infinity of consciousness, the whole all possibilities value of creation there in its abstract, unmanifest state. And then beyond that is the pure abstraction of Nirguna Brahm. This is Sadguna Brahm, this is Nirguna Brahm. So like that, I laid out the whole range of our visual world, and because geometry is more fundamental to our visual world, then we found a way of connecting the artists in a very simple way to the source of their discipline. Because once you know where the point comes from and what the point is made of, what's very beautiful is mathematics tells us that a line, no matter what its length, is comprised of an infinity of points. So here's an indication, because the line, is a projection from the point, is the expansion of the point. The point expands to the line. So here's an indication, is that this must also be an infinity. So then the conclusion is that, very obviously, that when the infinity collapses to a point, it doesn't lose its infinity. It just becomes infinity in its most concentrated form. So the whole thing is infinite, the whole thing is consciousness. And then here you see this play of this expansion of possibilities. coming right out to this universe. Now here, mathematics would describe these geometries, or analytical geometry would talk about them in a different way. But when you place them in the arena of the visual arts, in the context of the visual arts, there's a whole different set of natural laws that start to bear upon these forms, because it's a different discipline and it has its own laws that govern it, completely different from the laws that govern mathematics or physics or analytical geometry. And because those laws are different, and we place those forms in that situation, then those laws start to reveal new secrets about these forms. And this is what happened for me, and this is what we discuss in the book. We go into the details of what these forms actually are, and we start to relate them here to the structure of consciousness here, the knower and the knowing known, and then all the different relationships, right down to the relationships of the structures in physics. So we structure this total value of knowledge within the discipline of the visual arts. This is the idea, to bring that holistic value of all our scientific knowledge and all our Vedic science, which is what Maharishi Vedic science is, an integration of both things. We want to pour that all into the visual arts and re-enliven it with its real cosmic power.